UMGoBlue.com. By fans, for fans. Since 1999.
Hello! Welcome to this edition of the UMGoBlue.com podcast. This is Phil Callihan along with
Clint Derringer.
This edition of the podcast is sponsored by Autograph, rewarding fans. And now a word from Tom Brady.
Maize and Blue Nation, it's Tom Brady. I co-founded Autograph with one mission in mind: change the fan experience for the better. That's why I'm excited to announce the release of a new app that recognizes the biggest Michigan fans. The Autograph Fandom app gives you access to the best Michigan content, fan challenges, and exclusive rewards for diehard Wolverines, all for doing the things you already do, like listening to this podcast. Head over to the Apple App Store and search for Autograph Rewarding Fans and download today.
Now head to the Apple App Store, download the Autograph app by searching for Autograph Rewarding Fans, and use referral code UMGoBlue. And we're here to talk about the results of the game, Michigan versus Ohio State. And of course, Michigan was triumphant, winning by a score of 30-24.
Yeah, I think that Coach said it last night. This is the ultimate team. He talks about the team. Well, Team 144 is the ultimate team in every way, shape, or form. Offense, defense, special teams. We got each other's back on the field, off the field. And we know that we're always going to respond. The guys don't flinch. They just keep attacking. And I think they just continue to show that every week.
The whole mantra, the team, the team, the team. He was saying we are that team. You know, everything we do from just a character and from a hardworking and committed perspective, he was just saying that we are those guys and we should just, really believe it, embody it, and go out there and show the world. I didn't think we proved any of those guys wrong or, that was our intention. We proved ourselves right. We know who we are as a team. We know all the work that we put in, and we just wanted to go out there and display it for the world to see, and, obviously extremely happy with the way we did it.
Well, Clint, what'd you think about that one?
And it was amazing. From the very start, Michigan getting off to a great start after the interception by Will Johnson, really kind of put the stadium and the atmosphere into high gear, and it really felt like the whole crowd, the whole atmosphere was super high energy the entire day, and the team played very well, and I think you got to tip your cap to Ohio State for playing a pretty sound game as well. I'm not sure how much they would change going back, other than probably forcing it to Marvin Harrison Jr. more than 5 receptions, but they had a very good game plan and were able to try to exploit what Michigan was doing on defense, and did a pretty good job bottling up the Michigan offense. So I was very, very impressed with how well Ohio State played. The fact that they fought back after falling behind. I really was hoping that Michigan was going to get kind of an early knockout punch when they were up 14-3, but Ohio State really answered the bell. Every time Michigan looked like they were ready to start pulling away, Ohio State answered, including the one drive where they ran the ball 8 straight times and just pounded it at Michigan and kind of made a statement there in the third quarter. And then, of course, I think the signature moment for me and for others, everybody that I've heard talking about it, is the play. It's a great play for Michigan to A.J. Barner, delayed pass over the middle. But Zach Zinter goes down, breaks both bones in his lower leg, and just devastating. Your best player on the offensive line, captain, kind of just drains the emotion and the energy out of the place, and everybody, of course, is worried about the kid, first, and then the team and the crowd again kind of rebuilds that energy almost immediately. The very next snap, Blake Corum takes off 22-yard touchdown up the left sideline. Great cutback, really sets up his block on a duo and puts it in the end zone. So it just didn't have the same kind of signature performance, I would say, from any one player. Just in really the perfect fashion for this team. I think everybody found a way to chip in, and it was an amazing day to be a Wolverine.
So you talk about what would Ohio State change, right? And when you look at the stats, Michigan ended up with 338 total yards. Ohio State ended up with 378. And, talk about the setting for a little bit. It was an extremely cold yet bright day. And while we have memories of Michigan, Ohio State being gray and overcast, it really struck me that it was really Big Ten football weather. It's the weather that SEC teams don't want to play in. It's the weather that teams from Southern California, they don't want to play in, right? But it really brings out the best memories of the Big Ten, Michigan, Ohio State, the premier matchup in the league. They can add as many teams as they want, and yet everything, as much as everything changes, it remains the same. It's Michigan, Ohio State. And listen, I, in the last several weeks, and I'm sure in the next couple weeks, I will continue to give the Buckeyes a certain amount of grief, and I will give Ryan Day a certain amount of grief. But what's interesting about this is I always say that when you have a rivalry, it's who you match up against, okay? If you didn't have respect for Ohio State, if you didn't think that they were a really good program, the win wouldn't mean as much, okay? And for years, Michigan did not hold up its end in this rivalry, okay? And I know Ohio State fans love that, and they love having the long success that they had previous to these three games. But as much as, again, I will give Ohio State and Ryan Day grief, it wouldn't mean as much if they weren't as good as they are. And what struck me about this is, listen, I don't particularly like Ryan Day. I'm glad he's not our coach. But if you look at the stats, he is arguably a great coach. And yet right now, he is defined by these last three losses to Michigan. And as a Michigan fan, I'm pretty gleeful about it. And when you look at this game, I mean, if you knew going in you were going to win like this, you would love this game, right? I mean, shots thrown back and forth, punches answered. And again, I do have to say that during this game, I had a lot of confidence. Now, the one time that I was concerned was that drive in the third quarter that you mentioned, where it looked like Ohio State had come up with a combination to be as tough as they said they were, and they were just going to do what we did to Penn State and just run the ball and just completely take over. And after that drive, Michigan dialed up some changes. Ohio State changed their play calls a little bit. So I do have to tip my hat to the Buckeyes. Love that Michigan won. Love reveling, marinating in 3 consecutive victories. But again, listen, I like beating Michigan State. I like beating Notre Dame, but there's nothing like beating Ohio State. And, when we look at this game, it was so perfectly matched, right? In the first quarter, Michigan, at the end of the first quarter, Michigan led 7-3. Heading into halftime, Michigan was leading 14-10. And then, there have been times this season where Michigan has dominated the third quarter. Well, at the end of the third quarter, it was 24-17, and again, hard fought battle, punches thrown both ways. And then Michigan scored 6 points in the fourth quarter. Ohio State scored 7 points in the fourth quarter for a final of 30-24. And again, game was in doubt all the way to the last few minutes. And the Michigan defense answered the bell. really they caused two turnovers on that final Ohio State drive. Ohio State was fortunate to recover the ball on one. And then, of course, there was the game-ending interception. And for those who weren't at the game, and I know, we have many listeners who are season ticket holders and who were there, but we also have many people who weren't. I can tell you that the stadium was amazingly loud. The atmosphere was amazing. And it's everything that college football, the pure essence of college football, on just, an amazing crowd, an amazing day, played outside. Tons of fans there, cheering their team on. Tons of Ohio State fans traveling up. And again, just an amazing atmosphere. And the Michigan Stadium crowd definitely answered the bell to support their team. You mentioned the Zach Zinner injury, which was horrible to see. Clint, you and I have been around football enough to have seen some pretty horrific injuries. This was definitely one of them. But what was amazing is how, yes, everything got quiet. I mean, very, very quiet for such a huge stadium, right? And then the crowd began chanting, "Let's go, Zach." And, as Zach left the field, he waved to the crowd. And it's just, again, horrific for him. We have the report that surgery was successful, and hopefully he'll make a full recovery. But just so much emotion, so many emotional swings in that game. And then to come out on top and have the fans rush the field, really just an incredible scene. It was a great day to be a Wolverine. Of course, it's always a great day to be a Wolverine, but it was especially great on that day to see the crowd and to see the team respond the way they did.
Yeah, and you mentioned it's kind of Big Ten or college football at its purest. And for the 23rd consecutive year, the team that ran for more yards won the game. Michigan ends up with a net, rushing total of 156 yards to Ohio State's, 107. And that is, I think that's what Michigan has hung their hat on for these last 3 years, that they've been able to beat the Buckeyes. And Ryan Day knew that and tried to instill kind of an air of, physicality into his team and schemed up a pretty good running game plan. But still, on 19 carries for Travion Henderson, he only gained, 60 yards, an average of 3.2 per carry. And, Blake Corum scores 2 touchdowns, but averaged 4 yards a carry, really tough sledding on the ground for both teams. And the defense has really set the tone for the day, in my opinion. And then the other big difference is Kyle McCord compared to J.J. McCarthy. So Kyle McCord throws for 271 yards, and Marvin Harrison gets 118 of those on 5 catches. J.J. McCarthy only throws for 148 yards. But 2 humongous interceptions. One to start the game for Kyle McCord, where he's picked off on a slant inside, trying to force it to Marvin Harrison. And, Will Johnson kind of ran the route for Marvin Harrison on that play and picks it off, returns it down to the 7-yard line, sets up the first touchdown, and kind of sets the volume level for the day. And then, of course, the last, meaningful snap on offense is, get pressure in McCord's face from the edge, from Jalen Harrell. And he kind of, again, trying to force it to Marvin Harrison, kind of lets it a floater outside or down the middle, and Rod Moore picks it off. So the 2 huge mistakes that he made, talking about McCord, basically became the difference in the game. And it's not to say that without those that the entire result is different, but when you're trying to line the 2 teams up afterward the way that we like to do, I think the slight difference in the rushing game, Michigan being able to stick with it a little bit more consistently 39, rushes compared to 28 for Ohio State, 156 yards compared to 107. And then the two big turnovers by McCord, where McCarthy was 16 of 20 for 148 yards and a touchdown. So just Michigan played cleaner, made fewer mistakes. And even when guys went down, when Will Johnson was hurt in the second half and Zach Zinter's hurt in the second half, guys stepped up. The next man up mentality and the culture that this program is kind of built on, that we've been talking about for, I think, probably 2.5 years straight now. Always different names, kind of leading the charge, but the culture of positivity and kind of sticking up for the guy next to you and selflessness, it all pays off in a game like that. When your best guys go down and the next guys come in, and all of a sudden the running game looks better than it did when Zinter was in there. Moving Barnhart into guard and bringing Trente Jones off the bench and in at right tackle. Those two guys, when I rewatch it, I am sure those two guys played a whale of a game starting in the third quarter. And I think if I were to send out any huge individual shout outs, it would be to Carson Barnhart and Trente Jones for not only kind of holding the fort down when Zinter got hurt, but really pushing the running game forward, and really setting up the spine and the backbone of that clock bleeding 7-minute drive on the last field goal to make it a 6-point lead.
So what struck me is, as you mentioned, historically, this game pivots on who can be more successful in the running game, right? So you look at Michigan and 156 net yards, 39 carries, 4 yards per carry. Pretty good. So you head over to the Ohio State side, 107 net yards, 28 carries, 3.8 yards per carry, right? And I've watched a lot of Ohio State football. I don't watch nearly as much as I've watched of Michigan. And I'm still baffled by, okay, there was that drive in the third quarter where they just looked tougher, stronger, faster on offense. They looked like what I feel we aspire to be sometimes, right? With Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. I wonder why they got away from it. Okay. And, it's not like we can ask, Ryan Day, what were you thinking? And I think we're too close to the game for any Ohio State watchers to be candid in what their opinion is. But, I keep coming back to the only time that I was concerned was that drive, right? And when they came back after and, kind of went to the passing game, as you mentioned, they ended up passing 10 more times than Michigan did, right? Or 9 more times. And, you had JJ 16 for 20, 148 yards. And I do want to point out Donovan Edwards, 1 for 1, and for 34 yards. And what I want to point out about that is this is something that you and I have been talking about offline, right? Because we do not want to offer any aid to the enemy. But several games ago, I noticed Donovan warming up, throwing passes, and not without purpose, okay? And I remember telling you and the rest of the people on the umgoblue.com team, I said, I think we're going to see Donovan throw one soon. And I think back to early in fall camp, there was a point where they asked Donovan, and this has happened over the last several years, but they asked him who's, last year when he was battling, when we saw JJ and Cade battling, right? Who's the best quarterback? And he said, I am, kind kind of laughed, right? And, you see him warming up with purpose, and that's what we got to see in this game. So I was happy from a personal standpoint that finally saw him unleash what I thought what they were prepping. And it's just weird because we saw Michigan, even when they got, okay, so we talked about the Donovan Edwards pass, right? But they bring in Alex Orji, which is, kind of throwing a curveball, experimenting on offense. But even he ran the ball, right? So it's just, in this game that we know pivots on toughness, pivots on running the ball. And, we mentioned the Zach Zinner injury. Even after the injury, Michigan did not go away from the run. Okay, they punched it in. So it's interesting to me that when, the game is on the line, there is a default to, we're going to run the ball, we're going to get it done. And there's a reliance on what needs to be done in this game. And I think that's my biggest question. If I had the opportunity to talk to Ryan Day, I would ask him, like, what were you thinking here? Right? Like, did you intentionally get away from it? Were you playing against typical? Okay. Or is that, when you say, well, would they go back and change anything? I wonder, right? Because ultimately, that interception turned the game, right? And of course, at that point, they kind of had to. But I just wonder when I look at this, the other thing that I think we need to call out is that, Ohio State missed a 52-yard field goal, right? 1 for 2. Michigan was 3 for 3. And one of those was a 50-yard field goal. And we hadn't really relied on, special teams field goal kicker too much this season. Not, in past seasons, it was pretty much automatic. But again, just Michigan performing in all facets of the game. And I think that's what struck me in watching the film is that, they talk about balance. They talk about playing complementary football. And, when JJ needed a run, he did. But it didn't seem like he was running more than he needed to, right? It really seemed very balanced and very not panicking. Like, this is who we are. This is who we're going to be. You didn't see JJ trying to light it up, throwing 3 or 4 touchdowns to reignite his Heisman campaign. And you saw Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. Blake ran for 22, had 22 carries. Donovan had 10 carries. Just going back and forth the same way they have all season. So it's just really interesting that watching this game, if I had to describe Michigan, and I always like to take the labels off. If I'm just watching a team and I don't know them as well as I do, I would just say that Michigan is a team that knows who they are and plays with a confidence and an assuredness that, they have a plan and they're going to implement it and they're going to execute.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the kicking game too. James Turner hitting 3 field goals all in the second half, starting off with a 50-yarder was a huge difference. Obviously, in the game, I think the punt team, both teams punted 3 times. Tommy Doman ended up with 156 yards punting, an average of 52, and had the bomb that he uncorked for 71 yards that ended up going into the end zone. Still a net of 51 on that punt. But his others averaged over 42 and a half as well, even without the 71-yarder. On the Ohio State side, they only averaged 36.7 yards a punt. So to every phase of the game, at every level, Michigan just played a little bit better. I would say Marvin Harrison Jr. outshone Michigan's wide receivers on an individual basis, but collectively, the Michigan passing game was more efficient. And I think that we'd be remiss if we don't say that all of this happened with Jim Harbaugh not on the sidelines. This is, again, a program that was able to continue churning despite every possible hurdle and landmine that could have been found was found in this season. And I am just absolutely amazed at the mental and psychological strength of the players and the coaching staff to be able to continue so consistently and with resolve and never wavering, even with, the biggest game, any of us has seen in recent memory and maybe ever, depending on, be an interesting conversation once we get far enough away that the emotions aren't so high. But, one of the biggest games ever to be played in that stadium for this program, and everything before the game was weighing down the Wolverines, and they came out and just executed well, played their game plan, didn't make huge mistakes, had guys go down, had backups come in and make big plays. Quentin Johnson made a huge play in the secondary with a big hit to jar a ball loose and force an incompletion. Josh Wallace is the guy that poked that ball out at the end when Ohio State's final drive. They were fortunate to fumble, one receiver to another. It wasn't necessarily the star players at Michigan. It was everybody. Every single guy stepped up, did their part, did it well, and collectively Michigan comes out with a 6-point win. And I don't know if you could be if you're a head coach like Jim Harbaugh and you're not able to be there. I don't know if you can give any better testament to his ability to build a program in that they put together that performance without him there to oversee it and to help implement it. So I think it's just truly amazing. I am shocked that with everything going on, that this team was able to keep it on the tracks and to execute so cleanly in the biggest moments and to handle the adversity and to do it with, outwardly and from a PR standpoint with class. And they really earned that victory, and they earned it on the field, off the field, in the locker room, in the press room. It's been a joy to watch. And I know we've said that a couple different times throughout this season, but these kids, these coaches are really, really fun to watch. And I'm glad that we've got some other, really meaningful football games coming up, because I just love turning it on, sitting down with my family or sitting in the press box with you and the rest of the guys and watching this team. This is as good as it gets.
So what's amazing to me is that, it really dawned on me when I was listening to Sherrone Moore talk in the post game. We talked the last couple seasons. We have talked a lot about the depth that Michigan has developed on this roster. The depth on the offensive line, the depth on the defensive line, that, Aiden Hutchinson leaves and the defense just keeps going. And players go down and the team keeps going. In this game, Zach Sinner went down and the offense kept going. You have Sherrone Moore, who as an interim coach has 2 wins over top 10 programs, okay, as a backup, right? What kind of resume is that for him? Now, of course, I hope he stays here for a very long time, but how many coaches, when they're looking for their next job or when programs are thinking of recruiting a new coach, how many coaches have that kind of resume, right? And not only the resume of those wins, but doing so with all the drama swirling around. So, I've given props to Ohio State and Ryan Day, but the snark in me says you can't even beat our backup coach. And, that's no disrespect to Sherrone Moore, but we talked about the load it puts on you to have to do all those jobs. You only have so much bandwidth. So imagine you're Sherrone Moore, you're the acting head coach, you're the offensive coordinator, you are the offensive line coach, and then you witness arguably your best player go down with a devastating injury. Okay. And you are concerned about him as a person, you're concerned about your team, you're concerned about winning the game, all of that to make the adjustments on the fly and to close that game out. I mean, Sherrone Moore said that when he spoke to Jim Harbaugh after the game, Jim told him he was a stone cold killer and meant it as a compliment. And again, the way that the team could execute, we've talked a little bit about the atmosphere, but there was so much extra hoopla. You had the game day folks there, you had the Fox folks there, you had so much extra attention on this game. And again, went out, came up with a game plan, executed, won the game. Clint, you say this a lot, survive and advance.
It's crazy to feel the energy in this building, in our building, in the room, with the players. Extremely excited to win the game, but they expected to win it. And they want to go down there next week in Indy. We're familiar with it. We're going to play a really good team, but we want to go win that. And we're not satisfied with just winning that. We have bigger goals. We have all the goals. We have everything out there that we've worked for, and we want to continue to pursue that. And these guys have earned that opportunity to go to those places and go win. So just excited for these kids up here.
Yeah, I mean, I was getting emotional after the game. Like, being a senior, like, this could potentially have been my last game in the big house. And really hit me once I got to the locker room. And then I got excited. I was like, oh, wait, like, I still got at least one more game left. And that's just something I get to work for. And I can't wait to just go all the way with this team. Like, there's no other people, no other guys I'd rather go all the way with.
And ultimately, that's what Michigan needed to do, just as they had 11 times before. But to do so in the maelstrom that was swirling around this program, and the amount of people that, you always have people who root against Michigan because you're Michigan, right? You always have, of course, the Ohio State fans rooting against you. But I think there was an extra bit of disdain for Michigan that, while all this media-created hoopla was swirling around, it didn't take them down. They just sucked it up. And, I was thinking like a hurricane just takes, the energy of warm temperatures and just gets stronger. And that's how I felt watching this game, is that, shoot, if they played like this with Sherrone Moore and all this stuff going on, how much stronger are they heading into this, the back, shall we say, the bonus part of the season here with Jim Harbaugh back, and, with all these incredible goals ahead of them. Next up is the Big Ten championship, but this team has higher goals. This game is built, and the players have talked about it. They are here to win a national championship.
There's going to be more to come, but as of right now, this is, to me, my greatest win. Because when you say something, you have to stand on it, and when I put it out there, before the season, we were going to do all these things, I knew I was going to have to back it up, so, my team came together and we all backed it up, but just like, Kobe Bryant said, the job's not finished, man. We have a lot of work to do. We have to go back, tomorrow. We can enjoy the day, but we had to lock into Iowa right away and get ready for Indy. And then after that, we'll see. But, just like the great Kobe Bryant said, the job's not finished, man.
Same thing that Blake said, we'll figure it out when we're all out of here, and we'll rank it then. But job's not finished. We've been here before. We've been in this situation. We just got to focus on, watching the film, getting after it on Monday, getting after it on Tuesday, and just keep things simple like we've been doing all year.
And after seeing what they've been through the last few weeks, I don't know who would reasonably bet against them at this point.
Well, I mean, from a resume standpoint, it's tough to it's tough to beat what Michigan can put on paper. Having beaten Penn State on the road 2 weeks ago without their head coach, beating Ohio State at home, in kind of an instant classic. Again, I certainly didn't dominate the game, but they earned it, right? They did what they had to do to win, and across the entire board to do that, and it's such a huge rivalry game, says a lot again about the core of what this team is. Again, without their head coach, and no other team has done that. There may be better wins on other teams' resume, but not two of them better than those two. So it's for all the complaining or criticism that Michigan took for the soft early part of the schedule. Now that we're here after 12 games and Michigan's 12-0 on top of the Big Ten East heading into Indianapolis against Iowa, another 10-win team, I have a lot of respect for Georgia, the two-time defending national champions. They dominated Michigan 2 years ago in the playoff, but they don't have 2 wins as good as what Michigan has, and 3 wins if they take care of business and beat Iowa. So I think these other teams should be on notice. Michigan is clearly rolling, and like you said, even when a potential obstacle comes up, Michigan steamrolls that obstacle and kind of absorbs it and turns it into their own fuel source. And I think they have as good a chance as any of winning the national title, because they almost immediately said after the game, when I heard Blake Corum in the presser after the game say, "This was a great game. I hope that it kind of cements part of my legacy and why I came back here, but we got bigger things to do. We got other goals. Job's not done." Like, this is within half an hour of the game ending, and he's already kind of recentering on what needs to happen next. So I'm convinced that there's no way to distract this team from their ultimate goal, and we'll see if they can pull it off. And it starts with everybody kind of turning the page like that and getting ready for an Iowa team that is awfully tricky. So I still kind of glowing and floating on cloud 9 after beating Ohio State for the whole week, but something tells me that the team has turned the page and is ready to move into this postseason and make another statement and put themselves to the test and prove why all these guys came back and wanted to play one more time for Michigan in the postseason and take a run at the national title.
So one thing that I was thinking as the time was running down in that fourth quarter is that J.J. McCarthy had said,
I grew up first being an Ohio State fan. I won't lie. I did, but God had different plans for me, and showed me the way. And I'm very blessed and appreciative to be here. That's for damn sure. It's just a blessing in disguise, because this university is the best university in the world, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. So happy to be a part of this team. Love every single one of these guys, and happy we did it out there today.
as good as Kyle McCord is and was in this game, you got to be kicking yourself as an Ohio State fan and as a coach that, if things had been a little bit different, if you had played things a little bit different, J.J. McCarthy would be on your team, right? And you just look and, I think back to that. I think the seeds of this 3-year run were sown and fueled a little bit by Ryan Day making that comment about that looking forward to hanging 100 on Michigan, right? And, it's one thing for players to talk trash, it's one thing for fans to talk trash, but when a coach does it, you have to back it up, okay? We had Trussell come in and say, I'm guaranteeing a win in Ann Arbor next year, right? And he did it. You can't talk shit and not back it up. And I think that, that's what struck me on Roman Wilson's touchdown.
Ridiculous throw, too.
Crazy. You see the throw? Insane.
Insane throw. And he'll tell you that he saw the guy that almost picked it, but he didn't. He just launched it in there.
What was your reaction, Sherrone?
I mean, it's JJ, so I was like, good job. I mean, I knew he'd make a play. I told him before the game, listen here, like, when the game matters in some critical situations, I'm going to put the ball in your hands because I know you're going to make a great decision and you're going to help us win and you're going to find one of your dudes, whether it be that one over there or this one or one of the other guys. But I know, like, where his mindset is at, especially on those critical downs, and he found those guys, and it was just an amazing play by him and then amazing plays by all these guys up here.
Where Ryan Day is just losing himself, screaming at the refs, right? It's a bad look. It's a bad look. And, I've talked about this before, that I don't want Ryan Day being my coach. I don't want my coach acting like that, right? It really came off as desperate in the moment and wrong, right? And it's just amazing to me, he had this quote in the post game of, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but, the rushing game is what determines it. And I'm thinking, you know what determines it? What plays you call, right? You are the master of your offense. You set the tone. And I, again, I do want to point out that, 3 is a magic number. Michigan's won 3 games in a row. Ryan Day is 3/4 of the way to hanging 100 on Michigan. Of course, that's over 3 games, and who knows, and if he sticks around maybe another couple years, he'll get that 100. But you just look at it, and you had a team that really came out in Michigan and played confident. And don't get me wrong, again, Ohio State played great. They are a great team. But on this day, Michigan was better. And on the last 3 years, on the day that it mattered, Michigan was better. There's the saying that, once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, and 3 times is a pattern. Well, guess what? Michigan dominating this rivalry is a pattern, okay? You could say 3 years ago, Ohio State will say, oh, it was the weather and, lightning struck and Michigan won, right? You play games enough and eventually you're going to lose. Well, okay, Michigan won and they won at home 3 years ago, and Ohio State was put on notice. And then Michigan went down to Columbus last year and pulled away in the second half. So, okay, Ohio State's really put on notice. They're going to come up to Ann Arbor, and yes, it was cold, but there was no snow, so they didn't have that excuse. And Michigan came out and got it done again. And if you are an Ohio State player or a coach, you really have to, and I think back to what Mike Barrett said.
Heart, for real, honestly. Just kind of going down to heart preparation. When you get in those moments, you got 2 great programs going head to head, and kind of when you get in those moments of like who wants it more, and you just have to have that heart. You got to be built into you, honestly. And I feel like over the past couple of years, we've just kind of been building that, stacking those pillars, just stacking every day, and just kind of preparing that preparation kind of builds that confidence, which builds that heart, that courage. So I feel like that's kind of where that goes into.
You want to put on like the Louis V, like the $1,000 outfit, like you want to act hard, but when we're out there, like they're not hard. Like I see the film, like you're not tough. Like, and I don't think I'm the toughest guy in the world, but You know, I'm out there, I'm getting physical. Like, I don't think they wanted it like how I wanted it.
Yeah, I agree.
This isn't time to get down. Okay, if you're Ohio State, this is where you got to dig in and work even harder. Okay, and I think what we're gonna know what we have in these teams next year, right? And I will look forward to it. And until then, I will enjoy this. But having been on the wrong end of this for a great many years, as you and I have been, right, during the Rich Rod and Brady Hoke era, you know, I always think back, you know, the one win that Brady Hoke got over Ohio State was with their interim coach. But we still count that win, right? But again, it was an aberration. And you have 3 straight victories for Michigan. You know, 3 different ways too. Okay. And you look at it and you're just like, all right, you know, it's on. The fight is on. And if I was an Ohio State fan, I would not feel good about the way Ryan Day is purporting himself and the way the team is responding. And again, it's, you know, I hoped when Jim Harbaugh returned to Michigan that not only would he return the program to prominence, but it would raise the level of this game. Okay. And I think that it's done that, right? This is if an example of what college football is great, how it's great, and why it's great. And of course, it's great to be on top, but you know, it's the kind of thing where I'm going to look forward to this. And you and I have talked about this year. You know, enjoy what we have right now. Okay, enjoy where we are, because you know, again, 4 or 5 years ago, you know, there was questions whether we were going to get here. And, you know, I often talk about that, you know, I grew up at the end of the Bo Woody era and how great Ohio State football was, how great Michigan football was. And I always would say, man, it must have been really fun to cover it back then. Well, this is like that, and I think even better. The access that we have to the players, the way that the players are free to speak. This is a great time to be a Michigan football fan, and I really hope that everyone is just taking it in and enjoying it for what it is.
Yeah, exactly right. I think that's exactly the right point to kind of tie a bow on that whole week. You know, there's still work to be done, still goals in front of us, but in terms of just pure enjoyment in the sport and with the team that we care about so much, this is as good as it gets. Soak it up and do everything you can to hold on to the memories that you create during this season, because it's special, and what the players and coaches have put together is special, and everything that we can do to support them from this point forward, we should do, and I look forward to doing it.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the UMGoBlue.com podcast. This is Phil Callihan along with
Clint Derringer.
Go Blue.
All I'm going to say is we live by the motto, what are you going to do today to beat Ohio State? And that's a motto we've lived by for 2 years, coming up now. So, that's everything we started to work on, everything we started to build. It's for moments like this. So.
Can't nobody say shit else. Thank you. Can't nobody say shit else. Boy, we did it without our head coach. What happened to them Buckeyes, boy? Hey, let's go. You don't got no more excuse.
Thank you for listening to the UMGoBlue.com podcast. All rights reserved. Search for UMGoBlue.com on iTunes. Go Blue.